Discrimination
is usually an unjust treatment or prejudice against a group of people or a certain individual, usually based on like sex or religion or gender, or just honestly just putting someone down. Either you don't like them because there's a certain quality about them.
Any unfair treatment of someone because of like a physical characteristic or even a mental characteristic that they have, basically anything that's deemed unnormal by the rest of society.
is being treated unfairly because of how you look or who you are.
So I see discrimination as basically treating someone differently or less than you would normally treat people, just because they're different from you.
Among young people, it shows up in the form of harassment and bullying in the schools, and picking on them, on LGBT students. For middle-aged people, it shows up in the form of being rejected by their co-workers. Many of the LGBT people just never come out while they're in their working career because they're afraid of being fired.
I've been discriminated against before. When I was younger, people would always come up and make racial gestures at me. And one time at Family Fair, I got patted down because I was Asian and they thought I was shoplifting.
The way discrimination affects my life currently, so I'm married to an immigrant and he's also black. I, as a wife, am always thinking of like, what if? Like, if he gets pulled over, what could happen? Because as a black man in America, like, they don't know that he's not from the United States. They don't know that he's not African American. My kids, I'm gonna have to train them what to say when they come across a police officer and how to act and how to deal with bullying in school. With kids are probably gonna call them the N-word, and how am I as a mother gonna have to react to that? And I gotta prepare my kids, my son, for that. And so it's just a lot of different things that you have to think about as a wife and mother, even if it's not facing me directly, it is. Because discrimination is just so prevalent in this society.
We had a situation in Kalamazoo. I live down closer to Kalamazoo than I do Holland, but we had a situation of where a person was in hospice dying of lung cancer, and it was a transgender person, a male to female, and the staff there refused to recognize her as female and continued to use her legal name, which was a male name, continued to use male pronouns on it, and her family had rejected her, and so she had a social worker, and the social worker reached out for people to visit her on it because that's what worse time to be discriminated against as to when you're dying.
I personally experienced the discrimination when I was invited to the table at organizations, but it felt more like I was there for the picture. I was there to make up numbers so that they could say they had a young black male on their panel or on their board or whatever. But at the same time, even though I was there, I felt like my voice wasn't being heard. I wasn't given the opportunity to speak into my community because you can't possibly know what you're talking about because you're so young or because you're a minority. It's a terrible feeling to be in a space where you have ideas, you have dreams, you have hurts that you want to express, but you're not given a space to do that.
I think the most common example that you see now in high school is usually people being excluded from friend groups or just because based on a certain attribute of that person.
Discrimination exists because people are scared about people being different.
I think it's more ignorance than hate. It's come through the ages of that person is gay, that person is lesbian, etc. And especially people don't understand transgender. It's just foreign to them. They don't understand, they're afraid of it, and so they discriminate mostly out of ignorance.
Throughout history, just humanity in general, and definitely as a nation, we have put up barriers to things that we don't understand. Whenever something is different, there's something new, something that maybe is a little bit uncomfortable to us because we're not used to that. Typically the response as human beings is to put up a wall or just to step back and like, oh, I don't know about this. And so we sort of paint this us picture for our own protection and a them picture to keep them at bay. I think at the root of it's really, really fair.
I think discrimination exists because it's kind of our human nature to judge and classify people so we can extinguish ourselves. And so when we classify people into certain groups, we usually have self-bias against ourselves, so we think that we're usually better.
We can end discrimination if we be nice.
In my opinion, education is the best way of doing it. I'm not one that's going to stand on the street corner carrying a picket sign and marching and that sort of thing. So, speaking out and educating.
How can we as a society change racism? I think a huge part of that is, at its core, valuing people. At the end of the day, there's a lot that we have in common. We all want to live a successful life. We all want health, wealth, prosperity. So recognizing that there is a lot that does unite us. There is a lot that we do have in common. And I think a big part of that is the giving people, whether it's a minority group or somebody who's just different from you, giving them the opportunity to share their story and to lament, this is how society, this is how others have treated me, so that they can find some closure. You can never heal until you find closure.
I want to challenge you to invite people who aren't like you, whether that's skin color, economic class, gender, race. Just getting to know them, getting to know what their life is like, can really, really broaden your view and your perspective of the world.
You can see that where you come from kind of pushes you off in the world, but it doesn't inhibit what you can do.